the ontological argument. Now, the key phrase here is a priori. All that means is that it's based on reason alone. You don't need a telescope, you don't need a lab, you don't need any physical evidence whatsoever. The claim is that if you can just understand the idea of God, logic itself will force you to admit that God has to be real.
Okay, so let's travel back in time. Our story begins in the 11th century with a monk, St. Anselm of Canterbury. Now, he wasn't really trying to argue with atheists. He was a deeply faithful guy who was just trying to understand his own beliefs through the power of reason.
This right here is the heart of it all. This is Anselm's foundational definition of God. And you got to pay really close attention to the words he uses. He's not just saying God is the greatest thing you can think of. No. He's saying God is a being so great that it is impossible to even conceive of anything greater. It's like the absolute conceptual ceiling. If you think you've just imagined something greater than God, Anselm would just say, well, then you weren't actually thinking about God to begin with.
So for this whole thing to work, Anselm needs to define what he means by greater. And his move is simple but brilliant. He says that something that exists in reality is always greater than that same thing existing only in your imagination. Think about a painter. The amazing idea for a masterpiece in her head is one thing, but the actual finished painting, the one hanging on a wall that you can see and touch, well, Anselm says that is obviously far, far greater.
Okay, so here's how he puts it all together into a logical knockout. Step 1, we start with that airtight definition of God. Step 2, pretty straightforward, right? We can all think about this idea in our heads. Step 3, we accept his principle that real stuff is greater than imaginary stuff. And that, my friends, leads to the logical checkmate in step 4. Think about it. If God, this greatest conceivable being, existed only in our minds, then you could easily conceive of something greater, namely a God that exists in reality. But that would totally contradict the definition we started with. So the only way for the definition to make any sense is if that being must exist in reality. It's like a perfect logical trap.
But the story doesn't end there. Almost immediately, another monk named Gaunilo stepped into the ring. He thought Anselm's logic was a bit of a trick, and so he came up with a counter-argument to try and show everyone why.
So Gaunilo wants us to do a little thought experiment. Go ahead, try it. Picture the most perfect island you can possibly imagine. With the perfect sandy beaches, the perfect weather, just the right number of palm trees. An island so perfect you can't even conceive of a better one. You got it? You have that idea in your head? Okay, now here comes Gaunilo's move. He just takes Anselm's argument and does a find and replace. He swaps out God for his perfect island and runs the exact same logical program. If you can imagine the greatest possible island, and if existing in reality is greater than just being an idea, then, following Anselm's own rules, that perfect island has to actually exist somewhere, right?
And this is the punchline. The idea that a perfect island must exist just because we can imagine it is, well, it's obviously ridiculous. You can't just wish things into existence with a clever definition. So Gaunilo's point is this. If the same logic that proves God's existence also proves the existence of this absurd island, then the logic itself has to be broken. It can't be trusted.
But wait, Anselm wasn't down for the count just yet. He came back with a reply, arguing that Gaunilo's whole perfect island parody completely missed a crucial point. Anselm claimed his logic wasn't some magic formula you could apply to anything. It was specially designed for one and only one concept.
Anselm's whole defense boils down to this. You can't apply my argument to islands, or perfect pizzas, or anything else. It is exclusively for the concept of God, because God, he says, is a totally different kind of being from everything else.
He says there are basically two different kinds of things. On one side, you've got contingent beings. That's us, that's islands, that's planets. We happen to exist, but we don't have to. Our existence depends on a whole bunch of other factors, and you can easily imagine a universe where we're not here. But on the other side, Anselm says, there's a necessary being, something that exists by its very nature, something whose non-existence isn't just unlikely, it's logically impossible. For Anselm, that can only be God.
This is why the whole perfect island idea falls apart for Anselm. I mean, what even is a perfect island? It's totally subjective, right? My perfect island might have a volcano, yours might not. More importantly, an island by its very nature is contingent. The definition, a piece of land surrounded by water, doesn't have "and it must exist" baked into it. But for God, Anselm claims the title greatest conceivable being demands necessary existence as part of its very definition.
Plantinga pointed out the issue wasn't the logic, but the very idea of a greatest island. Here's the key insight.
Some properties have a ceiling, and some just don't. And this is where things get really interesting, comparing the island to the concept of God. Think about it, you can always make an island better. Just add more beaches or palm trees. Right? What's the perfect number of trees? There's no such thing, it's infinite. So the whole idea of a greatest possible island just doesn't hold up logically. But the attributes often used to describe God, well, they're a whole different ballgame. Take omniscience, that's maximal knowledge. You can't know more than everything, that's the limit. Same goes for omnipotence, or maximal power. It's the absolute peak. There's nothing higher. You see, these qualities have a logical ceiling built right in. They aren't endless. And that makes the idea of a maximally great being logically coherent, unlike the island. So let's break it down. The island concept is incoherent because its qualities have no limit. And that's why Gaunilo's parody doesn't work. It's not really comparing like with like. He's putting an idea with no logical limit up against one that absolutely does.